want to start off by saying I know the last time I was up here, there was a lot of social media commentary about my hairstyle, the skullet, as we call it. So I'm not ashamed to rock the skullet. In the future, I'm going to keep this hat on, so keep you guys entertained in the media. So anyway, you can shake your head. I just want to attempt at a little laughter. Go ahead.
What do you want to get accomplished on a short week, and kind of where are you at putting this defense together after your first scrimmage on Saturday?
Yeah, the scrimmage was awesome. We had like 86 plays. Tons of stuff came up. Obviously, when you're in a team setting, lots of stuff to coach off of from a technique standpoint, from an execution, effort standpoint. You know, the installation's been pretty much in for the majority of really after the 5th or 6th practice, and I'd say now I'm either tweaking things or, hey, let's maybe try this because this is working, you know, experimenting a little bit with some scheme stuff, experimenting with a little bit of personnel stuff, because I think we're pretty comfortable on, you know, where we're at from a menu or from a game plan standpoint. And then it's really just kind of continuing to emphasize the collectiveness of your defense to make sure that everybody's playing on the same page, executing as 11. The best defenses I've been associated with are not just have great players, obviously, and good schemes, but they play well together. So I think that's where the last, 4 or 5 practices, days, we have, it's not just the practices too, though. It's the meetings, it's the walkthroughs. It's just kind of continuing to galvanize that unit collectively.
How do you think the connectivity is between those 11 guys, or whatever group of guys you have on the field at any given time?
I think it's a work in progress, because it's you're kind of, you've got pieces. There's more than obviously just 11. And it's not the same 11 all the time. We probably have a pretty firm 2 deep right now in terms of guys that are in the mix at different positions. And when we're saying multiple, we're multiple scheme wise, but we want to have as many personnel groupings as we can have that would then utilize our personnel. Some individual players do certain things. So that's one of the things, maybe going back to the first question, is how can we maybe, this guy kind of knows our scheme right now, but how can we maybe try him in a little couple different spots to see if he could add value to our defense. So I think it's getting there. And obviously we have the summer and really training camp to really get that thing tight.
What do you feel best about so far this spring about the defense? I mean, is there anything you feel really good about this defense?
I think we've been, if you look at the numbers, we've been, playing some pretty good man coverage. I think some of the additions we have in the secondary have allowed us to do that. And then we've kind of moved some guys around, and that's helped us. I think we've got some pretty good blitzers that we've been utilizing in different spots that I'm excited about, So those 2 areas I think are things that just kind of initially stand out, and I think the continued development of our defensive line has been good. Terry's doing a nice job with Phil, and I think those guys are coming along, since obviously that's an area of that we lost some guys last year, but I think that they're getting better. So they would be the 3 areas that just kind of popping off of my head.
How much have you grown in the secondary as far as finding players that you can trust? Rule mentioned the other day, I think he said 6 corners and 5 safeties who could start. So where is that in comparison to where it was 11 practices ago?
Well, I think it's a long way away from the end of the season, even, because you kind of wondered where you were at, and then we added some pieces, and I would say all those pieces that we've added, not only in the secondary but on our defense, we're excited about. And we do feel like we've got, just as Matt said, those 6-ish guys that have gotten reps with the ones in different kind of scenarios. And some of them have played some other positions too, which helps us, allow us maybe to play at times 3 corners on the field, or obviously 3 true safeties. So it allows us to kind of put different pieces to the puzzle together. But I would say that unit collectively, as not only the numbers of it, but also how they've performed, has been an area I think that should be a strength for us. And that's kind of, you guys have asked me about Snow a little bit, and that leads into that a little bit. Like, he has so much experience at other places with Matt, and so I'm constantly saying, okay, where do you think we are relative to this place, or where do you think we are relative to your, and that's kind of some good feedback, and I think we're in a pretty good spot right now, and with our back 7, really, not only just our secondary, but we've got we're probably, 3 deep at 2 linebacker positions and some of those guys add some pretty good versatility. So
You talk about the back seven. What about your front guys? What's the depth looking like there, and what did you see on Saturday from them?
yeah, I think that's a continued, work in progress. I think there are some guys that have solidified themselves as probably frontline players, but I think we have numbers there that we are trying to kind of stack, so to speak. Whereas this guy after 10 practices, I think that's probably something maybe more so than the back seven that's really going to probably take its way all the way through training camp, just because the grind of that position, the health that's needed at that position, I think will affect things. And then obviously I think we have a couple young players coming in at that position that may end up helping us, So I think there'll be some maybe more fluidity there than maybe there is in the back seven.
Andrew Marshall was an all-conference player at Idaho. How has he blended in here as a guy with a lot of experience and accolades coming here as a transfer?
Yeah, I think I just mentioned that all the new guys we've talked about have really been nice additions, and I'm trying. I know you guys don't like this, but I'm trying my best not to single anybody out not because I don't want to give you guys information, because at the end of the day, it's all about building a team. But I would say we're very happy that Andrew's here, and I think he's going to have a strong impact on what we're doing in the back end.
Hey, Coach, with the 3 safety positions on your defense, if you're going that avenue, what traits do you look for that kind of help you determine who fits where best?
Right. From a secondary perspective, just as defensive back player, there's really 3 things you have to be able to do. You got to be able to cover, you got to be able to tackle, and you got to be able to play the ball. And if you can do those 3 things within their own little kind of guidelines underneath of that, you're going to be a really good player. So like from a coverage perspective, you got to be able to play man, zone, and some type of match principles. You have to be able to tackle, and tackling is a lost art in today's game because of when you emphasize player safety a lot of the times you sometimes sacrifice the physicality of how you're practicing tackling. So that's an area that's just we are continuing to work and develop that I think is critical. And if players ever ask me, when they ask me how can I separate myself from other players on the team or even other players in the draft, I'm like, if you become a great tackler, you will clearly separate yourself. So I think that's a huge trait. And then the ability to defend the ball, whether you're breaking it up or intercept it. Did studies throughout my 10 years in the NFL. If you're a player in college that's around the ball in college, you're going to end up being around it and intercepting it in the pros. So those are the 3, traits from a trait standpoint. And then you got to be smart, tough, and dependable, because you got to be somebody that, offenses are moving constantly. If you watch college football and pro football, very rarely is an offense going to break out, line up in a formation, and stay that way. There's going to be motions, shifts, sometimes multiples within plays. So you got to be smart. You got to be able to communicate. You got to be dependable. You got to be someone you can count on. So those traits, I think, are the ones that, when you're looking at who's out there for us, it'll be those guys that have those physical traits we just mentioned, and then that level of smarts, toughness, and dependable that they can execute, play with effort, and finish.
If someone asked you how much physicality is there in a typical Matt Rule practice, how would you characterize?
I've only worked with Matt for a full season, a training camp, a full season, and a spring, and I would say that is the level of physicality that he demands is elite, meaning that we are going to practice very hard. We're going to maximize the value of every single period. There's going to be a physical element in every one of them, whether it's individual, special teams, 9-on-7, perimeter. Like there's really, the only time we're jogging through and running through is right before practice. Other than that, everything is physical. And I told him that as the season was going last year. I mean, I think that's obviously a trait that his teams have always had, and now you know why. Because in order to be physical, you have to practice physical. You can't practice at a certain tempo and then expect that tempo is going to reflect itself, come games. So I would say that would be my first impression just overall. But somebody said, why has Matt had so much success? I'm like, it's because we practice hard and we practice physical, we practice tough, and I think that shows itself on what I saw from afar in his teams at Temple and Baylor, and then obviously what we're going to be about and have been about here.
Back to the tackling for a second. When you show guys on your team clips of who's a good tackler, both guys that you coach in the NFL or even a player here, who are you showing them clips of?
I am showing them clips of secondary players that we had in Buffalo, obviously. You know, guys like Jordan Poyer was an elite tackler and worked at it. And it's not just like, hey, he's an elite tackler. It's because he would work at it in practice and he'd stay after. The kid, Taron Johnson, who's their nickel, was a great tackler. And then that kid, Christian Benford, that just signed, he was, I think one year he was the number one tackler in the league in the secondary. And a lot of it has to do with the fundamentals. It also has to do with the size of the players. You have to be big, strong. You know, so, but I think you show everything, right? So, like, we had a presentation in the spring about Peanut Tillman, how he punches the ball. So you're just trying to use resources at all aspects of, okay, this is what we're coaching you on. And we always joke, sometimes you don't believe us. So let's just show you an NFL player doing it exactly like we coach it. Or let's show another guy we've coached in the past doing exactly like we coach it, because you're always trying to just give examples of what we expect, showing other people doing it correctly, and then therefore convincing them that they can. And tackling is a constant. We work it every single day in pre-practice, in practice, and even in today in practice, actually we were tackling some live situations because you have to get good at tackling.
How are they doing?
Progressing. I think it's on the right track, tracking the near hip, taking the extra step, tackling with dominant contact, getting body on body, convincing themselves, some of these younger players convincing themselves that, you know, there's no alternative to it being a physical game. So if you ever want to get out there, you're going to have to be a physical player. So
With the emphasis on player safety, how do you find the line between still being physical, still making dominant contact, but also recognizing that if you cross the line, then you'll get flagged and penalized for it?
yeah, I think the constant thing is you're emphasizing player safety and health, but you're also convincing them on the level of physicality that's required. So you have to, that is a fine line, because football is a unique game because of the tackling aspect and because of the injuries that come with not just tackling, but how physical the game is. But I think what I've learned through the years is there's no substitute for actually tackling bodies. So, like, you can drill tackling a bag, and you see all these cute toys, the roller, donut bag, and sleds and things. But at the end of the day, like, you have to practice tackling bodies, fitting up against bodies, striking bodies, and then tackling them to the ground at enough times to get you where you need to be. So I think it's just, I think what happened was when the player safety thing kind of really hit its peak, a lot of people backed away from the physical element of it and just constantly were teaching the fitting and the wrapping, and I think that's why the tackling has suffered through the years. So I think with Matt and how he emphasizes it and how we follow his lead, I think that's allowed us to be one of the better tackling groups.
Speaking of the NFL, we won't get a chance to talk to you, I think, again before the NFL draft. So, NFL defensive backs really well. How do you assess, as Tommy and Isaac go into it, and then just the guys here, what do you tell them about, their potential futures, and what do you feel like Tommy and Isaac can potentially
Yeah, as far as the guys that I was with last year, not just all the DBs, but all the players, I think they've all put themselves in pretty good positions based on the feedback that I've gotten from NFL scouts that I know personally, secondary coaches, defensive line coaches, defensive coordinators, GMs that have called me that I've either worked with or personal relationships. So a lot of those guys that participated in Pro Day, and even some of the offensive guys, just because they always want to know who knows stuff, I think they've really helped themselves with their offseason. So it's going to be an exciting time for them. And at the end of the day, what I tell them is that where you get drafted is just where you start. Because at the end of, where you get drafted and who you get drafted to, that's just the beginning. And now the work begins again. And your pro career will be determined on the work that you put in the organization that you're in, and it'll have nothing to do with what you've done to this point. So I think that's the biggest thing they've got to understand, whoever it happens to be, whether it's Giff or Ty or Nash or, Thomas Fidone, people have called about, or MJ. There's been a lot of them. So I'm glad that they're calling about him, because that means if they're calling about him, they're interested in adding him to their organization.
Terry Brady's a new face. What sort of defines him? You oversee it. What has sort of defined him so far in your eyes?
I would say the first thing is his work ethic. He's here all the time. He's working hard at it. He spends a lot of time with the players, within the rules and the hours you can spend, but like really investing into those guys. And I would say that, a quality that you want with all of your staff members is the loyalty to like, okay, this is what he's coached it to do, but this is the way you guys want to do. I want to do it this way. Meaning like towing the line and doing it exactly as Matt expects and as I expect, we expect, I guess you'd say. So I think he provides a lot of energy. I know he's looking forward to getting out on the road recruiting someday. I told him he can have some of my recruiting days, but we'll see. But I just think he's been a good, fresh addition to the staff that I think is going to continue to help our players get better.
How, if at all, has your vision of what this defense is going to look like has changed from the beginning of spring to now, just a little bit over a week later?
I don't think it's really changed at all from a vision standpoint. I think I have a clearer picture of schematically what we're going to be able to do, of our personnel, obviously, considering, I knew the majority of the roster, but a lot of those guys have still gotten better. I think our offense has continued to get better, so then you measure it on like, okay, their improvement versus our improvement and where we are relative to where we need to be. So from a schematic standpoint, from a personnel standpoint, the picture's just getting clearer. And then obviously we just got to keep emphasizing the execution, the effort, finishing plays, those types of things. Because that ultimately is the identity of your unit is going to be how hard they play, how well they execute, how fast and physical they are, and are we making plays when the money's on the line in the fourth quarter or on third down or in the red zone?
All good?
Thank you all.
Thank you.